Hi, I'm Andrew.
And I'm Sam.
And we're at Board Gaming. And today we're going to be doing reviews on two games, because they're essentially the same game. And that is Unmatched. So we're going to be taking a look at Teen Spirit as well as For King and Country from Restoration Games. Now, we've already done a ton of Unmatched content because it is a game that I thoroughly enjoy. And so I'm not going to go into a full teach. I'm just going to do a real quick overview for each of the characters. There's 3 that come in each set, and we're going to come back. We'll talk a little bit about what we liked and maybe didn't like and how we rate these games and let you know which one we prefer over the other. So let me go ahead and give you an overview of the characters in these sets, and we'll come back and give you our final thoughts. All right, so we're first going to start off with the Teen Spirit set. So I'm going to start here with Squirrel Girl and kind of show off what she's all about, and I'll also reveal some of her cards to kind of give you a feel of how she plays. So first off, this is her mini, which is really kind of cool. She's holding a little squirrel here on her hand, and she's got this big giant squirrel tail, and she's like up in the air, like kind of leaping off of the squirrel tail. I think that's pretty neat. She has a starting health of 13. She has a movement of 2. And as you can see, she has these little squirrel sidekicks. And all of these are melee. And actually, in this entire set, all of the characters are melee. And to give you an idea of size difference when it comes to these small characters versus the regular sidekicks, so you have that's the size difference that you're going to see there between the small and the normal size sidekicks. Okay, so and she is the only one in the set that comes with a sidekick. So another fun fact kind of thing. But her special ability is that at the start of her turn, she can summon a squirrel in a space adjacent to Squirrel Girl. Squirrels are small fighters. You do not start with any on the board. Okay, and something to note about these small fighters is that they can move through opposing fighters, and opposing fighters can move through them. And you can have up to 4 of these characters in the same space. And so that's something to keep in mind. Adjacency is also considered in the same space as the character. So as these heroes, they are in the same space as the opposing fighter. They can attack them. They are considered adjacent. Okay, so with that being said, looking at her cards, you're going to be really basing a lot of it. You're going to be playing around these squirrels. It's going to be kind of a big thing in all of her cards. So let's take a look at some of the significant cards you're going to see in her deck. So here we have the scheme of Network of Spies, where you're going to look at your opponent's hand and you're going to discard cards. But if they're adjacent, if the opponent's fighter is adjacent to 4 or more squirrels, you have them discard 2 cards instead. And you're going to see that common number of 4 or more squirrels is going to enhance a lot of these cards, whether it be effects or values, those kinds of things. Here is the next card for the squirrel. Here it's a value 2. However, if the opposing fighter has 4 or more squirrels in their zone, then the card is a value 5, which is really good. And you get a full 3 copies of that card in your deck. So yes, it's a 2, but making sure that you have all those squirrels. And I should mention this actually, since we're talking about these small fighters. If you do have multiple in the same space and the opposing fighter attacks them, all of the squirrels in that space are defeated. So even if it's 1 damage and you have 4 squirrels, all 4 of them will be taken off the board. So you're really going to be trying to, bring them together when you need them to be together and disperse them when they need to be away, because you don't want to lose a bunch of these squirrels in one hit if you can avoid it. But this is one where you don't have to have them all adjacent. It can just be in their zone, and it's going to make that attack a lot higher. This next one is really cool that I like. It's called Kick Butts. And this one is that during combat, you're going to increase the value of the card by 1 for each squirrel that is adjacent to the opposing fighter. So if you have all 8 squirrels adjacent to the opposing fighter, this is a potential 9 attack, which is really high. So you have to be very careful when it is kind of telegraphed, because if you see Squirrel Girl maneuver and bring all of these squirrels into you're up to your fighter, you know she's going to be winding up to try and hit you with this kick butts attack. So it is kind of pretty telegraphed, but something that is really cool to try and pull off with Squirrel Girl. Next one is Call of the Wild, where again, if there are 4 or more squirrels in your fighter zone, the value of the card is a 4 instead. And it gives you some good card draw if you win. Unbeatable Squirrel Girl. This is where immediately, if there are 4 or more squirrels adjacent to the opposing fighter, you cancel all of the effects of the opponent's card and you ignore its value. So it's like a super feint, which is pretty awesome. And this is also versatile 4. So very high value, really, really good card there. Definitely like that one. Another scheme here where you are going to choose a space again with 4 or more squirrels adjacent to it, and you're going to deal 2 damage. So you can have that scheme where you're just dealing pure damage where they can't even defend. But again, you're wanting to have those squirrels adjacent to that space where the opposing fighter is. And then the last one I'm going to highlight here is Squirrel Agility, or Squirgility, I think that's how you say it, where which is going to be her defense card, where she has after she's done, she can move to 3 spaces. However, you don't count spaces as movement that contain these sidekicks. So if you have a string of squirrels, you could move essentially across the entire board without using barely any movement, just if you chain these squirrels, because every space that you move through that has a squirrel in it, you don't count as part of your movement. So yeah, that hopefully gives you a little bit of idea of how Squirrel Girl is going to work. All right, so Cloak and Dagger is going to be, if you're familiar with Unmatched, they're going to be similar to the Raptors. So Cloak and Dagger are 2 heroes as opposed to the normal 1. If you're familiar with the Raptors, there are 3 Raptors. Same thing here. You do have to defeat both heroes in order to beat Cloak and Dagger. Again, they're both melee, like I said. All characters in this set are melee, and they have a collective health of 16 or 8 each. Now, they have 2 abilities, which are essentially the same but pertain to each character differently. So, first, the ability Umbra is that if you attack, and after you attack, if it's Cloak that dealt at least 2 damage, combat damage, it has to be combat damage, your opponent has to discard a card. And then the thing for Dagger is almost the exact same, where after you attack, if Dagger dealt 2 damage, again, combat damage, then you gain 1 action. And a lot of their cards are going to be based on who plays what card. Some of the effects are going to be based on who played the card. There's also some, positioning of wanting them to be adjacent and maybe swapping space. But let's get into the actual cards. I'll show you what it's like. So first I'll highlight just some basic. Their highest attack is this 5. Well, not their highest. I'll get into this, but this is essentially their highest attack of a 5 that allows you to draw a card. Pretty basic, but it isn't any card, so that'll help you maybe trigger those effects with a 5 attack. The next one is going to be Perfect Balance, another any card that is versatile, and that during combat, if Cloak and Dagger are both adjacent to the opposing fighter, then the value of this card is a 6 instead of a 4. The next card is going to be a Scheme. Again, it's an any card, but this one is where you are going to be able to manipulate the health of your fighters. So you can deal up to 4 damage to one of your fighters, and then you can heal the other one for that same amount. So if I were to take away 2 health from Cloak, I do have these actually mixed up. If I were to take 2 damage and give that to Cloak, I could then heal Dagger by 2. All right, so that's how it's going to work. And then you're going to get another 2 draw 2 cards as well. Their defense card is where if Dagger played this card, you can swap spaces with Cloak, and then Cloak is now the defender, and the value of this card is now a 4. So you want to use that one specifically for Dagger if you can to get the highest potential out of it. Now, the next card is the actual highest attack that you're going to see in this deck, and it is for Dagger. It is a 7. And this effect cannot be canceled. And that's not necessarily a good thing, because if you won this combat your fighter is going to take damage equal to the amount of damage you dealt. So if the opponent doesn't play a card against this and they take full 7, Dagger is going to be taking 7 damage, which is essentially her entire health. So you have to be really careful about playing that card and making sure that you can pull it off because you have more health than they do when you deal that damage. I don't know. That's a tricky one to play. Very difficult. And then the last one I have here is Channel the Dark, which is that if Cloak played this card, you're going to place the opposing fighter adjacent to Dagger, and then you're going to gain an action. So there's some action gaining here. Again, you can get a lot of these extra actions just by doing damage, but this is a nice card that's going to give you extra actions, and then you place it next to Dagger, and if Dagger can get 2 damage, they can get another action, and if they can keep doing that, you can really burn up some of your opponent's cards or deal a lot of damage to them and just keep hitting them and keep hitting them. So that is going to give you a little bit of a feel of how Cloak and Dagger are going to work. Let's go ahead and jump over to Ms. Marvel. And finally, for the Teen Spirit set, Ms. Marvel, who has a health of 14. Here is her mini. I did forget to show off. Let me show you real quick. I didn't show off the minis for Cloak and Dagger, so I'll show those off real quick for you. So there's Dagger. Cloak's actually really cool. I like the way his looks. Um, that's probably my favorite mini, I think, of this set. But yeah, so Ms. Marvel, she has a giant fist there, which is pretty cool. But she does get 14 health, a move 2. She again is melee, and her ability reminds me a lot like it's essentially the reverse of Bruce Lee. If you know Bruce Lee, at the end of his turn, he gets to move 1 space. This is the opposite, where at the beginning of Ms. Marvel's turn, she gets to move 1 space. So she could jump in and attack, get that little extra movement as just a kind of like a little mini maneuver kind of thing. The second half of her stretchy ability is that she can attack up to 2 spaces away, ignoring zones. So she's kind of ranged. She's like T-Rex, right? The large characters are able to attack from 2 spaces away. Exactly the same concept here. She can attack within 2 spaces, and she doesn't have to be in the same zone. So taking a look at her cards, a lot are going to be based on the number of cards that she has in hand, as well as the zones or having more or less zones that she's in. Okay. So first, let's take a look at some interesting ones here. So here we have the Euro and Fries. She recovers 2 health, so she does get some health recovery there. And if you have 4 or more cards in your hand, you gain an action. So that's nice. You get that free heal and you get an extra action there. Next, we're going to have a versatile 3 card here called Easy Peasy, where you will draw a card. And if you have 4 or more cards in your hand, then, so you could just have the 3, and that card that you draw is going to count towards that hand count. 4 or more cards in your hand, then you're going to deal damage to an adjacent fighter. All right. And then as you're building up this hand of cards, you're going to be able to play Fangirl, which has a base value of 0. However, the value of this card is equal to the number of cards in your hand. So if you can get, 7, 8 cards in your hand, this could be a pretty big hit for Ms. Marvel. And again, you can hit from 2 spaces away. Really nice. Then we're going to go into the zone cards here. Ms. Marvel has an attack 4 with Big Windup, where during combat, if she shares no zones with the opposing fighter, you can boost this card. And I don't know, I think she has maybe a couple 3s. I know she has a lot of 2s. So that could be a 6 or a 7 right there. Next one here is a versatile 2, Shrink, 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 where you get to choose an effect. If she is in space, shares no zones with the opposing fighter, you get to do both. So you can choose one, but if you don't share any zones with the opposing fighter, you get to do both of these. So your opponent would have to discard a card, and then you can move the opposing fighter up to 3 spaces, which you can move them just out of reach for them to attack you, and then you can hit them again, and they would still have to waste a maneuver next turn to get back to you. So that's going to be, about zones there. Next one is going to be I'm Not Touching You, an attack value 4, where if she shares no zones with the opposing fighter, she gets to draw 2 cards. Again, getting those cards that you can then maybe chain some of these previous cards that you have here and really do some nice combo work there with Ms. Marvel. And then finally, you have this versatile 3, where during combat, if Ms. Marvel is in more zones, so before you want none of the same zones, now you just want more zones than the opposing fighter. The value of this card is a 6. So a lot of her play is going to be off of that. But it's interesting because you can attack from 2 spaces. You get that extra movement. It's all about your hand size. It's also about the zones that you're in. So she has some things to keep in mind as you're playing, which gives her a lot of different strategies to go for there, which I like. So that is going to be Ms. Marvel for the Teen Spirit set. Let me show you really quick the map for this. I'm not going to zoom out. I have it pretty zoomed in, but I figured they're all pretty much the same when it comes to these. You're going to have, this is Navy Pier in Chicago, which a lot of people were like, oh, why is it Chicago? Like all these characters are like in New York. And they explain, just kind of diversify a lot of the characters like Hell's Kitchen. They all take place in New York kind of thing. So just kind of breaking up the monotony of the same locations. But you're going to have the same thing where you're going to have the little token spots that you're placing things. And they have their own tokens. But nothing really fancy or different about this board here. Okay, so now let's go ahead and jump into the 4 King and Country set. All right, so kicking off War for King and Country, we're going to start with Black Widow. So she has a sidekick with Maria Hill, and they are both ranged with a move of 2. Black Widow starts with 13 health. Maria Hill has 6, so collectively you have 19 health. To take a look at her mini, she's leaping, about to kick someone right in the throat, looks like, kind of thing. Really action-filled pose. Looks like there's an explosion or something coming from below her. But yeah, so that's going to be Black Widow. So Black Widow is going to be unique because all of her schemes, this is her special ability here, are going to be missions. So they are scheme cards, but they are considered missions for her. And Mission Ready says that before drawing your starting hand, you are going to begin with a card called the Moscow Protocol card in your hand. And then you're going to draw 5. So you will start with a hand of 6 cards. And the way these are going to work is that each of them are going to have a mission. So this Moscow Protocol is going to be where if an opposing fighter took damage this turn, you can then play this. So you have a prerequisite before you play this card. All right. And all of these schemes are going to have a boost value of 4. And they're each, depending on what the mission is, they're each going to give you their own unique little benefits. So like this one here says that you will draw 1 card and gain 1 action. And all of these are going to say at the bottom, acquire a new mission, which at that point you will then go through your deck, flipping over until you get the next mission card. Then you're going to take all the ones that you pulled out, you'll shuffle your deck again, and that's what you're going to do every time you complete a mission until you have no more missions to complete. So looking at these missions, let's take a look at them. The next one here is the mission is that Black Widow has to be in the opponent's starting space. Once you do that, then you can deal 2 damage to each opposing opponent's fighters. Sorry. And then again, you're going to acquire a new mission. Then you're going to have this one here, where if Black Widow is adjacent to the opposing hero, you deal 2 damage to each opposing fighter in her zone and acquire a new mission. Then you're going to have this one where if you have 2 or fewer cards in your hand, you get to draw 5 cards, and then each opponent discards 1 random card. And then finally here is that if she is in her starting zone, you get to choose an opponent, they discard 2 cards, and then you would get another mission. Now, looking at her cards, she doesn't really have a ton of things that are exactly unique when it comes to her cards, but these are the ones that I pulled out to highlight for her deck. This is her essentially her highest attack here, where is it an attack 5, Widow's Sting, and then she gets to move 3 spaces afterward. The next would be her Widow's Bite, where she is attack 4, and if you won, your opponent discards a card. So she does have some of those where you're trying to get your opponent to discard cards. Maria Hill is going to have an attack or a versatile 4 here, where each of your fighters can move up to 3 spaces and they can move through opposing fighters. And then you will get to shuffle one of those missions that you had already completed. You could shuffle them back into your deck. So you could essentially continue to get those missions and completing them over and over again. She does have a unique ability here with Caught in the Web, where during combat it's like a feint, but it is only for a specific type. So cancel all after combat effects on your opponent's card. So unlike a feint, which she does have feints, but this one is only for after combat effects, but it is a versatile 3, which is nice. Maria Hill has a defense card here where it is a 0. However, if Maria Hill were to be defeated when she plays this card, she would then come back with a health of 3, and you would place her adjacent to Black Widow. So you could essentially bring her back from the dead. All right. And then here you have Double Identity, which is any card for Black Widow and Maria. They get to swap spaces, and if they do, then you have a new defender. So you can kind of keep Black Widow out of some heat if you need to jump away and throw Maria in there, or vice versa. Maybe you don't have that defense for Maria to keep her alive, so you need to throw Black Widow in there in order to keep Maria around. But again, they're both ranged. So that is going to be Black Widow, and there's the back of her cards. I don't think I've shown any other ones, but let's go ahead and jump over to the next character, which is going to be Black Panther. All right, so for Black Panther, you have this pretty sweet pose. I'll start with a mini. This is a pretty, I don't know, I like it. It's just him rushing into battle, which I think is very much his strategy based on the way his character plays. Is he seems to be a very aggressive player, which is very interesting, and it's something I enjoy. He does have Cherie as his sidekick, who is ranged, and collectively they have 20 health, 14 for Black Panther, 6 for Cherie, and they have a movement of 2. And what's nice about Black Panther is he has this Black Panther vibranium suit. And his ability is going to be that when you boost, you draw a card. And cards stored in your vibranium suit can only be used to boost. So what this vibranium suit is going to be is that Black Panther has the ability to take a lot of his effects are going to be taking the top cards of the opponent's deck and storing them here. So you are going to be dwindling down your opponent's deck by stealing them and placing them here on your vibranium suit that you can then later use to boost your movement or many of his attacks, and as you'll see, even his defenses you'll be able to boost. So plenty of boosting, and every time you boost, you're going to be drawing cards. So you're going to have plenty of cards typically in your hand when you are playing Black Panther. So let's take a look at some of those cards here. First, we're going to take a look at a Cherie card. It's a versatile 2 here, where after combat, Cherie recovers 1 health. And if Black Panther is in the same zone, then they will both, Black Panther will also recover 1 health. So there is some healing here for Black Panther. Then you have a scheme here that I thought was worth highlighting, where you get to move each of your fighters 3 spaces, and you can move through opposing fighters and then also gain an action. And then Cherie also has a scheme where you get to choose an opponent. You reveal the top 2 cards of their deck and store them on that vibranium suit. So, and there are 2 of those. So that's 4 cards right there, right off the top of your opponent's deck if you get those, which is going to give you a ton of ammunition for boosting. And remember, as we're talking about this, boosting, like I just talked about Black Widow, she has boost, all of her schemes are boost value 4s, which is just crazy. So if you were to manage to get a couple of those, that is huge for Black Panther. Here you have Ancestral Insight. So this is what I was talking about with the effects with the vibranium suit, to where if you won the combat, you reveal the top card of the opponent's deck, and you're going to store it on your vibranium suit there. And that's a versatile 4, so that's even on defense. Here we have where it's an attack 3 for anybody. So Cherie could also use this card. You reveal the top card. You don't even have to win the combat, but you're going to get a card for your vibranium suit. And then once you start getting this, and there's 3 of each of those cards, so you have plenty of cards to be able to take lots and lots of cards away from your opponent. And then you can use them for cards like this Vibranium Shockwave, where during combat you can boost the card. It's only a 2, so you might get 4, 5. If you do have the boost value of the 4, you could get up to 6. And this is even if you boost with your own cards, you can still get a draw. Okay. Then I talked about how you would even be able to boost with your defense. Here with Microwave Mesh, you can boost your defense cards. And then what I think is going to be probably Black Panther's greatest card that he has, Wakanda Forever. You can boost this card up to twice. And it even says here that you will draw a card for each time you boost. So you can trigger that ability multiple times. So if I boost it twice, I'm drawing twice, which is great. And then finally, Anti-Metal Claws has a versatile 1, but you get to add it's essentially boosting twice. Now, that first is just adding the boost value. You're not actually boosting, so you're not going to be able to trigger this ability, but you add the boost value of your opposing fighter's card, and then you get to boost it again. So it's essentially a double boost, but it won't trigger your ability twice. But that is going to be Black Panther. Very aggressive character here. Let's go ahead and move on to Winter Soldier. All right, and finally we have Winter Soldier, the only character that does not have a sidekick, which is funny because in Teen Spirit there's only one character that has a sidekick, and then here you have one that he's the only one that doesn't have one. And he has a health pool of 15. He is ranged. Let's take a quick look at his mini here. Holding his gun, he has his bionic arm that you can see there as well. So yeah, really cool. I even like the shade of his colors. Like it's like that grayish blue color. I don't know. I just like it. And the big thing with Winter Soldier is that the effects on his card cannot be canceled. So feints will do absolutely nothing to him. Doesn't matter if Black Widow even plays her card where she cancels after combat effects. It doesn't matter because none of his effects have been canceled. And you're going to see that some of those effects are not always good, but he does have, to kind of go against that ability, is that he has this scheme, a boy named Bucky, where he can ignore star effects on cards for the rest of your turn. But you only have 2 of these, and you get to gain an action. Okay, so that little star there is going to be on a number of cards, as you're going to see right here. So let's take a look at some of these. Here we have a scheme of manipulation, where you get to draw until you have 5 cards in your hand. However, then each of your opponents may draw until they have 5 cards in their hand. However, if you were to play this boy named Bucky, you could ignore that. But if you don't, then they get that opportunity. The next one here is going to be Bucky's largest base value card, which is Without Remorse, a 6 attack, but then your opponent will get to draw a card. Next, you're going to see here a versatile 5, also very good. And then after combat, you have to discard 2 cards, but then you get to draw 2 cards. So it's kind of the mystery of the unknown of what you're going to be getting. All right. And then we're going to move on to an attack value 4, program to kill. If you won the combat, you take 2 damage. However, if you were able to pair that up with a boy named Bucky, you could ignore that star ability. Next one is going to play into Winter Soldier. He, although being ranged, likes to be adjacent to the opposing fighter. So, if, in this case with the bionic arm, if he is adjacent to the opposing fighter, the value of this card is a 6 instead of a 2. However, then your opponent will be able to move each of their fighters up to 5 spaces. So you might be next to them, but they're going to jump away right afterwards. Next, you have Winter Soldier's defense card here. Complete the mission, where during combat you can boost the card. And I really like this because it gives you an interesting little take here. Like, I could boost it and just block a lot of damage. However, the after combat is that you deal damage to the opposing fighter equal to the amount of damage you took. So if somebody is hitting you, you're going to be doing that right back. And honestly, I thought about this. If you were playing Winter Soldier and you went up against Cloak and Dagger hit you with a 7, you kill Dagger no matter what. Because let's say Dagger hits you with a 7, you take 4. Dagger's effect is that they will take 4, and your effect is going to deal another 4 to them. Essentially, you can kill Dagger with 1 card here with Winter Soldier. So something, as we're talking about both these different sets, I think that's really interesting and situational. Something to think about. Next, we're going to have this attack 1 here, which is really interesting. Something new here where you're going to add 1 to this card's value for each space between you and the opposing fighter along the shortest path. So you might want to be really far away from your opponent during this time, which goes, again, you have cards where you want to be right next to them. This one, you want to be a little far away if you can, and get that shortest path to be the longest as well. So yeah, there's that one. Next, you have this card, which I thought was really interesting, the Reprogram. This one allows you to choose 3 cards in your discard pile and shuffle them into your deck. And there are 3 copies of this. So this card essentially allows Winter Soldier to really mix it up when it comes to the fatigue game, because he can essentially go infinite. You can continue to play these cards, picking 3. You could always just continue putting more Reprograms back into your deck and just continue to get more cards and more cards. Your deck's never gonna run out because you have 3 copies of this, and that's 9 cards. And if you just keep recycling these reprograms, you're gonna be able to go infinite, which is gonna make Winter Soldier a real pain in the butt when it comes to the fatigue game, because you're not gonna be able to get him. Here, the Wily Fighting, a versatile 3, deal 1 damage to each opposing fighter that is adjacent to Winter Soldier. Again, adjacency, dealing damage there. And then finally, Born in the Barracks, a versatile 3, where if you won the combat, you will recover 2 health. Okay, so he is also going to have some healing. He has a decent health pool with 15, so that's nice. He has 2 of those, so he could essentially have up to 19 health. But he does have some potential self-injury as well. So something to keep in mind when playing him. Very interesting. That whole can't cancel his effects, which is great, which also makes that reprogram awesome because you can't cancel it. So no matter what, he's the strongest, I think, when it comes to that fatigue strategy. Something to think about. But yeah, anyway, that is going to do it for the characters. Let's go ahead and take it back up top and tell you guys what we think of these 2 sets. All right, so we're back, and we're going to start off with talking about Teen Spirit. So in this set, you have Squirrel Girl, Ms. Marvel, and Cloak and Dagger. Okay, yeah. So technically this one came out just a little bit before For King and Country. Usually when they do these sets, like last year, it was Hell's Kitchen and Redemption Row, and they were just slightly delayed, like right after this one, and then like a month, and then another one came out. So these sets came out very close to one another, so that's why we're doing them together. Anyway, Teen Spirit, jump into it. What did we like? What did we not like? Kind of thing. I'm not really going to follow our game rating rubric just because we've covered so much for this.
Yeah.
So I just kind of want to jump in. What did you think of these characters? For me, I didn't... This set, I'll just say it, this is my least favorite set for the Unmatched Marvel series. I'm really not crazy about the artwork. I don't know why. I just don't really... I'm not a big comic guy, and the comic art style does not really speak to me. Also, the characters in this one aren't ones that I really relate to, you know? Obviously, I'm not a girl or a teenager or anything like that. But with that being said, they're not really exciting, which isn't... I'm not looking for them to do like the main Marvel characters, but these ones just didn't like wow me in the way that they played. There are some unique stuff, like now with Squirrel Girl, you have the small fighters that can have 4 of them in a space and you can be in the same space as another hero, and she has some unique little things to it, which is cool. And I felt like I should have enjoyed playing her a little bit more, but I
she didn't. Has an army of squirrels, so I mean that in itself is cool.
Yeah, but... and like kick butts or kick nuts is what it's called. Yeah, where it's like you can potentially hit 9, with all those extra things. But I don't know. It's unique. It just wasn't. It didn't take me too much. Cloak and Dagger played a lot off of each other, depending on who attacked and getting those bonuses. That was kind of interesting, because I might want to get some extra actions or, make my opponent discard a card, whatever it is. And then Ms. Marvel was unique because she was almost like T-Rex, where she could attack from 2 spaces away.
Yeah.
So I, I'm a mixed bag.
It's not your style.
Yeah.
I will agree with that though. Like, I really wanted to like this set because I was like, oh, it's an all-girl set. That's cool. And then, I mean, the art
in there.
Yeah, well, I mean, yeah, kind of, I guess. But I thought the characters were very unique. And I mean, the Miss Marvel, I'm like, oh yeah, that's like the comic Miss Marvel and not the one, like from the movies and, stuff like that that we're used to seeing. But this set, I didn't really care for that much either. The only character that I liked was Miss Marvel.
Really?
And I really liked her because I liked her ability of being able to hit multiple spaces away. She wasn't ranged, but she was able to hit from, so many spaces. I think
still kept other melee fighters kind of at bay.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah, like she wasn't ranged, but it was cool to do melee in that way. I thought she had some really cool abilities. Like I honestly enjoyed playing Miss Marvel. And then Cloak and Dagger, I mean, I don't think I played I didn't play it right because I killed off Cloak to give Dagger the health.
1 health.
He was about to die anyway, so I just sacrificed him to try to get 1 health, which was stupid though, because that was not a good choice. Because then it just went downhill from there.
Well, you killed yourself ultimately.
I did actually.
You played the 7, I can't remember the name, and you dealt 3 damage, you only had 3 health left. I was like, well, you take 3, so you're dead.
I got it. Okay, to be fair, I got it in my hand, and I was super excited that I got that card. And I was like, attack! And then you were like, well, you just killed yourself.
I was like, well, I win. Thank you. Good job.
So, I mean, I guess I'd rather kill myself than he kill me. But anyway.
That seems morbid.
I know it does. I'm sorry. But Squirrel Girl, like, I wanted to like her so much because I was like, she seems so cool. Like, a girl that has an army of squirrels that can attack you. Thought it would be amazing. But I really didn't care for her as a character. And that sucked.
Yeah.
Like, I felt disappointed about
Although
that.
when you played against her, you seemed really scared of all the squirrels.
I was. But, okay, I think when you play her, you have to be a person that is great at playing, like, multiple, like, lots of
you don't have to have
sidekicks, essentially. Like, she's got how many squirrels? 6? 8. So you're playing 9 players, basically, because you're moving all the squirrels.
All out, yeah.
I think she has to be played a certain way, and I did not utilize her strengths. But I think
being able to disperse your squirrels and then bring them all together and do something big.
You have to be able to think in that way. Like, you have to, and I think I just played her like, she has squirrels, right. And I'm like, I didn't play it the way that she should have been played. But I still going back to Miss Marvel is still like my favorite character out of this set.
Yeah, and I don't want to bash it too much because I mean there is some unique concepts that they bring to this. The small fighter, the cloak and dagger balance is interesting. Ms. Marvel, I think I'm there with you. I think she's my favorite from this set. But I'm not like super excited to play these characters. characters.
Yeah.
I would play them, but they're not going to be my go-to. And so, with that being said, it's still Unmatched. It's still great system. It's still a great game. But yeah, it's just lesser of the greats kind of thing. So, with that being said, let's go ahead and rate Teen Spirit real quick. What would you give this box?
I'd give it like a 7, but
7?
that's only because of Miss Marvel.
Yeah, I think I'm there too. I think I'm at a 7 with this one. This is probably one of my lowest. I don't know. It might be close to my lowest total Unmatched. How I would rank these. And so yeah, Teen Spirit I think would be a 7 for me as well. But I mean, still, if you're into Unmatched, you'll probably end up getting it. But I don't think you have if you have to pass on one, that's one I would say you could pass on that.
Yeah.
So let's go ahead and get to the better one, in my opinion, which is going to be For King and Country. Now, this one obviously has the more notable characters with Black Panther, Black Widow, and Winter Soldier. Also bringing some uniqueness, as every set does. You know, Black Widow has her missions. Her schemes are mission cards.
Yeah, those are different.
You have Black Panther, who is stealing your opponent's cards for his vibranium suit, and every time he boosts, he gets to draw a card.
Yeah.
And so that's really nice, not having to use your own cards necessarily to boost.
Yeah.
And then you have Winter Soldier, who is ranged, but also likes to be next to you in a lot of ways. And you cannot cancel any of his effects, but those effects aren't always positive for him. A lot of times they're positive for the opposing player.
Yeah.
So, going into the set, since I started off with Teen Spirit, how about you talk a little bit about what you didn't like about this one?
I really liked the fact that Black Widow had the missions. I thought that was an interesting part of the game. I mean, it did cause you to have to like decide, like, am I going to focus on the missions or am I going to focus on like other stuff, the actual fighting in the game? But I thought that was a cool like thing that they added. And then I did like the fact with Black Panther, you did not have to use your own cards to boost. So that was neat. That was something that I've never seen, obviously, in an Unmatched game before. A Winter Soldier, his is cool. The fact that none of his effects can be canceled. Like, I thought that is a huge part of Unmatched is when you play that faint card and you're like, well, everything gets canceled, you know? So that's it's nice going into it knowing that his stuff isn't going to get canceled. But yeah, he is able to like you said, I thought it was neat. Like, okay, he's ranged, but also there is an incentive for him to get close to you.
He has a lot of those cards.
Because he has the higher, like the 6. It's like a 6 if he's adjacent to you instead. So I thought that was neat. As far as like my favorite character in this set, it's kind of difficult for me to decide, but I think it's Winter Soldier.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I do like this set better. It still looks like comic book art, but I actually like this better. I think it's because it's darker. I like the darker color scheme. It just draws me in a little bit more. The other one's a little bit more bright, which you think would be like, more broad, drawing me in. But I just like maybe it looks too kiddish for that one. This one, I like the look.
I think they went with like, oh, Teen Spirit, like bright and everything, and then this is more.
Which I
Why
get
is
it.
this For King and Country though?
I think because they all are like soldiers and working for government. Black Panther. I mean, he's a king for his own country.
I always wondered that. Like,
so I mean, that would be my take, right? I mean, that's my take on it.
Okay.
Anyway, I really like this set. Of the three, my least favorite I think is Black Widow. Just because there have been games where I just have a handful of scheme mission cards and it's like I can't do anything. And sometimes those schemes, I'm like, I have to be able to do a certain thing in order to do this. So I have to try to be there, like be in a certain location in order to trigger this. And sometimes, like if I'm going for it, if people are familiar with my cards, like oh, they're going to my starting space. I know what they have, you know? Or, oh, I really need to try to deal damage to somebody so that I can play this other scheme card. And so I sometimes I feel like it makes me play and try to do certain things that I might not necessarily want to do.
Yeah.
And so, but she is ranged. Her and her sidekick Maria are ranged. So you get a couple range characters in this set, which I don't know if this is the first set that has multiple range characters. I could be wrong. But I mean, 2 out of the 3 are ranged. But even with her being my least favorite, she's still pretty decent. I still really like her.
She is like honestly, I will say like there was a game like I was so focused on the missions, and I do understand that feeling of like having a whole handful of missions because that happened when I played with her, and I was like, oh man, and
right.
so
because after you fulfill one, you go and look for one and you
yeah,
draw it, and then you keep shuffling. But so then when I'm maneuvering, I might draw more, and I'm just kind of like, man, I
yeah.
don't want these.
So then
right
you
now.
don't have you don't have defense, you don't have attacks, like that's the downfall with her. But I feel like other than that, like she's pretty good.
Right. You do start with 6 cards in your hand,
Yeah.
but then if I double maneuver at the beginning to try and get to somebody, then I'm already over my hand limit. And I was like, well, I got this card already.
Right.
So going first is never fun with her. Black Panther, I really liked. I was boosting like crazy when I'd play him, and just so I could get those extra card draws and just lay it on. And even his sidekick Shuri is ranged, which is nice, and she has some good cards. So I really liked Black Panther and just that constant threat of putting pressure on you and making you run out of your cards, like your deck, and then being able to boost multiple times, which is cool. And every time I boost, even in that card where I boost twice, I can continue to draw.
He's really powerful.
He has some potential, and if he's playing against people like Black Widow, all of her schemes, I believe all of her schemes are a boost 4. So I mean, those are big. If I could boost my card twice with 2 of her schemes, I mean that's probably unlikely, but still, you're adding 8 to that. That's huge. That's huge. He could really do some hurting without really even using his own cards to do it, which is awesome. So I like that aspect. Just really, he wants to be in your face, aggressive. That's Black Panther. I think I like that kind of gameplay. I don't really care for the exhaust game. Black Panther is in your face, aggressive. Winter Soldier, I really like more so than I thought I would, because yes, he does have those abilities that don't necessarily benefit him, but I feel like you can kind of play around that. I feel like in a lot of ways you can play around that and just not play those cards or use them to boost.
Well, I will say too, like he has like that. Okay, he has that scheme, those scheme cards that you know, you get to draw up to 5 cards, and then if you play the card before that, if you happen to get it, that other scheme is like it blocks you from being able to draw 5 cards too, because there are some of his cards that benefit you are the opposing fighter, but there is ways to like get around that, like you said.
Right.
So
and so yeah, so I really like this set quite a bit. My favorite from this one, I'm going to give the edge to Black Panther, but just slightly, because I really do like Winter Soldier. I think he hits like a truck, and being ranged and everything, I think he's really exciting and interesting character to play. But I think I'll give the edge to Black Panther just because I really love that aggressive, and using other players, stealing other people's cards. I love that aspect. And really helps whittle down their deck even faster. And so let's go ahead and give scores for King and Country. What would you give this one?
I'm gonna give it like an 8.5. I think it was really good, honestly.
Yeah. I'm gonna give it a 9. I really like this set. As of right now, when it comes to the Marvel sets that are out there, I think this is. I don't know. I really like Hell's Kitchen, although I don't really care for Elektra. I know she's the meta. She's like the overpowered number 1 in like all competitive leagues kind of thing. Or up there at least. And I really like Redemption Row. So this one's up there. I don't know if it'd be my favorite because I really like Moon Knight, but this is a really good set. I would put those, all 3 of the 4 are great. If you could not get one, Teen Spirit's one I wouldn't get. But this is a great set.
I don't know. I feel like for Miss Marvel, it might be worth it. I don't know.
That's one character.
True, but you gotta try it.
Right. So hopefully that gives you a little bit of idea of how these ones are played and our thoughts on them. We obviously, definitely me, big fan of Unmatched. And so with that being said, Please like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll be back when Brains and
More.
Brawn comes out later this year, and Tales of Adventure. We have plenty more Unmatched that's going to be coming at some point.
What's going to be in? Who's in those?
Brains and Brawn is going to be Spider-Man, She-Hulk, and Doctor Strange.
Oh, I'm excited for that one.
Yeah, I'm
actually.
pretty excited. I'm pretty excited for that set. So
Wow.
that one's gonna be up there.
Okay.
But anyway, check back. We don't have a copy yet, so we'll see when that comes in. But it'll be way down the line. But yeah, so please like, comment, subscribe, and we'll see you guys on the next one. Thanks for watching.
See ya.